Is this Ireland's new IRA? So it goes without saying, Ireland is in all kinds of trouble at the moment. I don't need to tell you that. If you watch this channel, you'll be well aware of it, because I cover all the things the mainstream media are afraid to or not allowed to touch. Recently, we've had a spate of incidents in the country, and this is on top of a flood of incidents in this country to do with the problems associated with mass immigration and uncontrolled open borders, essentially. We had that terrible, absolute, despicable, heinous, evil act committed on a 10-year-old child who was raped by a man who had come to the country illegally. It was supposedly served deportation papers and then just didn't go anywhere. And the state continued to fund and feed him. And then that happened. And then, of course, we had that absolutely, that atrocity where the Ukrainian boy who was only in the country seeking asylum for a few days, and he was stabbed over 100 times by a Somalian, as they said at the time, juvenile, who now they're saying, yeah, maybe we got that wrong. Maybe he was an absolute grown-ass adult. Well, no surprise to all of us here with that one. Now, that's off the back of the presidential election, which, as you will know, again, I'm sure, it was an absolute kick in the gonads for the powers that be with the Spoil Your Vote campaign, which achieved absolutely unprecedented levels of support, and from people who would otherwise never, ever have dreamt of spoiling their vote. Well, they wanted to send a message. The message was sent. The message was received. But the government are intent on doing absolutely nothing to change anything. They're just going to barrel ahead with their plans, which I said at the time would be what they would do, because the people in power have no other gears. They've no other speeds. They're a one-track, one-gear, one-speed pony, and that's all they know, and that's why, as far as I'm concerned, they all have to go. The whole system is broken. We need all new people in there who do not know how to play the game by the old rules, because the old rules have led us here. The government, of course, is under massive pressure now, and they know it, even though they've no intention of changing anything. And an arrest was made last week of two men, one, I believe, a Lithuanian man, another man from the north of Ireland, and it was put out in the media that they were part of some new group, a terrorist group, as they said, who were intent on causing violence and mayhem amongst mosques and IPAS centres against immigration and immigrants in general. That was the narrative. Now, of course, that, as usual, was painted as some extreme far-right situation, which, of course, the far-right is all of us, really. As far as they're concerned, anybody to the right of Chairman Mao is far right these days in Ireland. Anyway, it turned out that one of the guys arrested actually was a Sinn Féin person, or linked in some way to Sinn Féin, had attended Sinn Féin events, had a partner who was a Sinn Féin member who was then expelled, and had attended various events and had been part of the whole Sinn Féin situation. And all of us know quite well that the one thing Sinn Féin is not is far right. Sinn Féin is actually far left. They're pretty much Marxist. They're a socialist Marxist organisation. But on top of that, a new video has surfaced from a new group purporting to call themselves the ICA. That's the Irish Citizen Army. And Micheál Martin was quick off the blocks to get out there and tell the general public that, okay, we're now moving into a new phase, and we have these groups starting to spring up, very much in the same vein as the terrorist groups that certainly I remember from the 70s and 80s and 90s in the north of Ireland.
I'm concerned about the far right more generally in terms of that militancy. This latest development is very serious. I commend on Garda Síochána for intercepting and getting underneath the bonnet of this. This is a trend across Europe and the world. It is causing us a lot of concern at European level, but within Ireland, it does cause a considerable degree of concern.
Now, the group, or at least one of the groups that he was alluding to there, are these guys here. This is a video that popped up and it was floating around online there in the last week or so. The ICA, the Irish Citizens Army, is how they style themselves. Now, I'll be honest, I have no idea who these people are. I've never heard of them before. They've never popped up in any discussions or comment sections or parts of the interwebs that I'm involved in and that I watch. They just seem to have appeared as if by magic. Now, you could say, well, okay, there's two ways of looking at that. The first way, of course, is, right, well, there's a palpable anger in Irish society, which is absolutely true. The government is continuing to ignore this palpable anger, which is absolutely true. And that when you push any society of any kind to an extreme, into a corner, and you box them in, well, these types of things will inevitably spring up in one shape or form. That's correct. Now, the other way of looking at that is, well, the government's really on the back foot here. They're absolutely all over the place in terms of messaging. They can't seem to get ahead of the amount of crimes and criminality and really bad things that are currently happening in Ireland. So maybe it could be convenient to have some bogey men or bogeyman or bogey groups come into the mix. Again, that's another train of thought there. Now, different things can be true at the same time. They absolutely can, or a blend of different things. Now, I would dearly love to play you a snippet of what these guys put out in their video, their stated aims, etc., but I really can't, because the way things are at the moment, the pitch things are at the moment, I would probably get fingered by the governmental authorities for even showing you that. And it's freely available to watch on X if you want to go and find it. It's all over the place. But they would kick my door down for me just reporting the news to you and letting you make up your own mind about whether you think it's a psyop, whether you think it's real, whether you think it's just a natural outpouring of frustration on behalf of some of the more, shall we say, crazy elements of society. That's a decision that, we all have to look at these things and make up our own minds. As I said, this only popped up on my desk a couple of days ago. Until that, I'd never heard of anything to do with it. But for even covering it, there's a high degree that my channel would get nuked from orbit, and I'd probably get nuked from orbit too by the powers that be. And I've been warning, as you well know if you watch this channel, I have been warning again and again and again the political class, the government ministers, the people making decisions at the top of society. I've warned them that they are playing with fire with what they're doing to the country. They're doing things that are unprecedented in this nation's history, in this people's history. In the last few years, over 500,000 people have flooded into Ireland. That's just in the last few years. Over 500,000 people. And it was only about 4 million of us Irish to begin with. And there still is only about 4 million of us actual Irish people. That's an invasion. Now, if you're going to indulge in invasion politics and invasion tactics, you really are playing with fire. And Professor David Betts of King's College London, who has studied this type of society and when a society gets to a certain pitch and how revolutions and revolts break out in insurgency, he has been sounding the alarm on many interviews, and I've watched a lot of them, about how a society, when it gets to a certain degree of absolute frustration, the political class are completely ignoring the will of the people, the will of the public, the will of the voters. What happens next? This is not new. We're not reinventing the wheel here. Let's jump on over quickly to the Twitter sphere to see what some commentators are saying about this latest development, and you can draw your own conclusions from that. Real News Era writes, a video has surfaced that's remarkably similar to what's being described in the media as a far-right organisation that was planning an attack on a mosque. 3 men standing in front of an Irish tricolour making a statement such as, action will be required, no merely words but decisive principled action. The whole thing stinks of being a state operation to discredit the growing nationalist movement in Ireland. Lamass writes, if this was real, they wouldn't have released a public video. This is a psyop by the Irish state and British intelligence. He goes on to say, the biggest corollary to such Irish-controlled opposition outfits like the ICA or IDA is the Bolshevik Operation Trust. The Cheka ran this counterintelligence operation to undermine resistance to the Bolsheviks. they created a fake underground anti-Bolshevik movement to attract monarchists and dissidents. Interesting. Justin Slayman opines, citizenship means nothing. No nationalist would use that word. We have African, Indian and Muslim citizens, FFS. Well, that's certainly true. Citizenship here in Ireland is given out like Smarties. So what do you make of all of that? As I said, I don't know. I have no inside knowledge on who this dissident group is, if they are a dissident group, if they're real or imagined or some kind of cosplay enthusiasts. What do you think? Leave a comment. Tell me what you reckon is going on here. Is this ICA, is this the natural end game of intense frustration on behalf of a people, a society, a tribe who feel that their leadership has gone rogue and no longer is representing them or even listening to them? This is not anything new when a society gets to a certain level of dysfunction. Or is this a clever play on behalf of elements of the state or the state apparatus, intelligence services, etc., to get ahead of such groups and head them off at the pass, and also discredit all forms of nationalism and nationalist thinking? Let me know what you think. These are very, very interesting times here in Ireland. Very interesting times, and for all the wrong reasons. And one thing is very, very clear. Despite all of the signals the public are giving to our elected representatives, the government of the day, they're absolutely not listening and are absolutely intent on continuing on the course which has led us all to this very dangerous and sorry situation.